There's a special mitzvah to add to this simcha, and we'll go to the Peirush HaMeir. It wasn't done by people who were unlearned, or anyone who wanted to do so, like Hilchos Sukkah, but rather the great wise men of Klal Yisrael, the Rosh HaYeshivos, and the head of the yeshivas, the Sanhedrin and the Sanhedrin, the Hasidim, and the Hasidim, Askenim, the elders, the Anshe Ma'aser, people who were known for their spiritual attributes. Heim Shoyim Meragdim Sapkin. They were the ones who danced and clapped. And they were happy and sang in the Mesa Mishnah during the Sukkahs. However, all the people and the men and the women came to see and hear. The Rae Gann Mishnah cites Sukkah 50 to 53. He adds that there was a shiur for the korban that they sang with musical instruments on Yom Tov, but the mitzvah of Simcha is not doicha Yom Tov. The Rae Gann Mishnah cites Rabbi Yirmiyahu on Sukkah 51a that the shiur, the song over the offering, that's part of the service and it pushes away Shabbos. Because he's of the opinion that the song is not a oral but rather musical with instruments. And he questions from Hilchos Sukkah and Lulav that there it says, the Rambam writes that the main idea of singing is with the mouth, not with instruments. And you don't say shiur only with the mouth, because without a kli, she'ikar shiur is with the peh. Further, he writes, and others stood, some Levim, some Yisraelim, that would use musical instruments that would assist. This is according to the opinion that the main idea of singing by offering is with the mouth, because if it would be with the vessel, so the Gemara that only Levim could do it, because that was given to the Levim as a part of the service, and therefore it would be the musical instruments, since they can be done by others, would not be able to push off Shabbos. Only the one who's of the opinion that the main music would be with the musical instrument is of the opinion that the shiur of the korban pushes away Shabbos and Yom Tov. And he explains that the issa to sing with vessels on Shabbos, with Rabbanon, they were afraid if something breaks, they'll fix it. In the English, they didn't do so because the Kahana would stop anyone from doing it. And therefore, pushes off Shabbos, and you can sing with vessels of music on Shabbos and Yom Tov in the Migdosh, because in Avodah, and there's no shvus in the Migdosh. The Mishnah explains in the Beis Hillel of She'eva, they did not permit on Shabbos, since there were many klei shiur, there's more of a gzeira. And we have to say that even if the main shiur is with the mouth, the vessels of music do push off Shabbos, but the Beis HaMikdash, the Chacham did not say you can't use them lest they break. Besides from Tosfos, the questions according to the Gemara in 51 that in Halacha, the main shiur is with the mouth. It says in the Mishnah, Chalil would do 8 days. Even on Shabbos they would do so, because 8 days has to include Shabbos. And there the answer, there's no shvus in the Migdosh. And Sefer Likutim cites the Bein Shloimeh, another answer, that the main idea is, like in Hilchos Sukkah and Migdosh, that it is the main shiur is with the mouth, not with musical instruments. In the Kudus HaGriz, he learns that from the Rambam that similar to She'eva, which is mentioned in the Mishnah, is not the Nisar HaMayim. It's part of the festivities of the festival. Rabbi Yochanan Perla says that according to the Rambam, there's a mitzvah, a special mitzvah, Smachta B'nei Hashem Elokeichem, that 7 days there should be a simcha yisera in the Beis HaMikdash with Sukkos. Besides the simcha of the festival itself, which takes place elsewhere, throughout the world, in Eretz Yisrael, throughout the world. He questions why isn't this mitzvah reckoned among the mitzvahs, the positive commandments, and Sefer HaMitzvahs. Now, Perla adds a question that nobody questions the Rambam's words, which seem to be contradictory. Here he writes, some of his shiur has nothing to do with Nesher HaMeir, but is rather its own mitzvah in the Mikdash because of the obligation of the day. It says, Machon Nesher HaGodol. Besides the Hilchos Sukkah and Lulav, that's in every place, every festival. He explains that the Rambam is of the opinion that this simcha is min Torah. Therefore, he doesn't mention Nesher HaMeir. He brings a little between the Mosdos, and then he doesn't call it a simcha, as it's written, as mentioned elsewhere. Because mitzvahs Nesher HaMeir is Halacha Moshe Sinai. But the minig was to attach to it the simcha with it, but not because it's an integral part of the pouring of the water. Perla continues, according to the Rambam, which is mentioned in the Mishnah, the Gemara is an extra simcha, and the Torah has to do with the Beis HaMikdash, but before Hashem 7 days. And now it doesn't come because of Nesher HaMeir, which is only Halacha Moshe Sinai. And so the Peirush HaMeir, he writes, Beis HaShe'eva was the name of a place that they would get together for this special happiness. And they called it this name because of Shavta Mayim B'Sosim. When there's a pasuk that says in Yeshayahu, you shall gather water with happiness, which refers to Torah. But the main idea is that happiness is not associated with the pouring of the water, but that it takes place in the same time. Therefore, was called Simul's Beis HaShoeva. The going Perla, what's our besides Sukkah, according to the Rabbi Yosef, Simul's Yisera pushes off Shabbos. According to Rambam, it doesn't. For the Gemara, it seems Simul's Yisera means it's part of the festivities of the Regel. It happens with the eating of the Shalmei Simcha and the drinking of the wine. And the Mikdash on Sukkot, the pasuk commanded an extra one with song, dancing, and instruments and circles, as in Sukkah. But the song of She'eva, everyone says that's an extra shiur Yisera. It's not the Shabbos. That's the text that we have according to Rashi. Rashi questions why is it called an extra simcha, and he explains that it's not min Torah. Therefore, it's not Torah Shabbos. That's that we find, according to the Rambam, the simcha d'oraisa is learned from, you should be happy before Hashem 7 days. Only because he commanded us to be this extra simcha, it's not Torah Shabbos. Rabbi Yochanan Perla doesn't question. We don't find where the source is that this pasuk is talking about extra simcha. The Maggid Mishnah, the sites Sukkah, are also not understood because there the simple translation is only it's rabbinical because of the love of the mitzvah of Beis HaShe'eva, not because of the source the Rambam quotes. Furthermore, he questions. We find it says you should be happy 7 days. He's talking about Lulav. Have 7 days in the Beis HaMikdash. Mikdash, you got to take it 7 days. We do a commemoration for that. We take it 7 days, even today when there's no Beis HaMikdash. The words of the Rambam, he learned from the pasuk Simcha Yisera was in the Beis HaMikdash, would seem to contradict that he says that it has to do with the taking of the Lulav all 7 days. The Amik Brocha answers, the intent of the Rambam is not to say that the Simul's Beis HaShoeva is d'oraisa, for we do not find a drasha of this requirement in the Torah, but he means to say in Torah's Kahanim, which is in Parshas Emor, the Medrash says, why is the Lulav taking 7 days? Because it says you shall be happy 7 days before Hashem. And that's the species, the 4 species. The Rambam is of the opinion that even though outside of the Beis HaMikdash his obligation is only the first days, but the Mikdash was 7 days with the 4 species. And this simcha itself, without the 4 species, is not a mitzvah, but since the Beis HaMikdash is an obligation to it, therefore they established Peirush HaMeir without the 4 minim. And he writes, the Hilchos Sukkah was in the Mikdash a special simcha, as it says, you should be happy 7 days, to tell us that in the Beis HaMikdash there was an even greater one, because they had the 4 species as well. But outside of the Beis HaMikdash, there's a simcha that takes place all 7 days that has nothing to do with the species, and doesn't have to do with the pouring of the water. And since they did it all night, at the time when the water was also poured, therefore it was called Peirush HaMeir, for gathering of water. The Emek Baruch questions why the Rambam doesn't say the concept of blowing shofar, but when they pour the water, like in the Mishnah, it mentions that they blew. They came to the karka, to the ground of the Azor, they blew again, and they would blow the entire time. And he cites in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash all the blowings that took place in the Azor, and it wasn't because of the blowing of the water, the gathering of the water. It must be that the Rambam, in every festival, there were many blowings that were taking place, and even those that are specifically mentioned regarding the gathering of the water is not because of Beis HaMikdash alone, but they didn't do it for that reason. Therefore he writes, how was it? And then he mentions the Khalil was playing, and they would play with all the different musical instruments, everyone according to his understanding. Because the Rambam is of the opinion that there was no set order to it. The Machon Nesher 52b questions, where do we know this from? And the answer says, Shafta Mayim B'Sosai. Rashi writes that even the gathering of the water should be through Simcha, and according to the Rambam, that we learn from there that he explains Sho'eva, meaning a gathering of Simcha. We have, but we don't. He's saying Shafta Mayim B'Sosai to tell you that there's a sosai associated with the gathering, but not that it's because of the gathering. And even according to the one who's of the opinion in 50b, that's called Simcha Chashuva, it's a special happiness. The intent is that the happiness with Hashem is a great mitzvah from the foundations of creation and the work, and a basis of the work in the Beis HaMikdash. Now, we mentioned that if there, we understand why outside of the Beis HaMikdash or today we don't have to make a simcha. So the simcha of the 7 days, because even today we have the simcha of the first day of the species, and we have them the rest of the days. So we have this simcha. So inherently, there's no obligation to the simcha, to more simcha, but there is always the aspect of simcha because we instituted it with the 4 species for 7 days.